So I guess I'll start from the top. I think the first one of the ones that I've seen on my own was Detective Pikachu, which is a film by famous filmmaker Rob Letterman, famous for such classics as Shark Tale.
Yeah, working at the car wash.
I want to be with the somebodies, not the nobodies. Loved that film when I was a kid.
That's my favourite Martin Scorsese voice performance of
It's
all
probably his
time.
only one.
Yeah, that was the joke.
I'm glad
It was a
I
joke,
got it.
son. You missed it. Tell us about Detective Pikachu.
So I was kind of intrigued about this because I loved Pokemon when I was very, very young.
Nerd.
When it first came.
Sorry.
Hey, everyone loved it.
I'm going to stop it. I didn't.
Well, that's because you were a nerd.
I
You're
was,
still into
I was
Batman,
busy
weren't
watching
you?
12 Angry Men.
What, in 1999?
Yes.
What were you doing? What were you doing in 1999? What were you into?
I can't remember. I was eating pasta and playing hide and seek.
Flapping.
I did, yeah.
Oh, yeah,
flapping.
you were
those are the days. And
way
people
above.
judge me for that. I can't flap in Rude Boy Alley. Anyway, sorry. Pokemon.
Yeah, so it's weird because I haven't been into Pokemon big style since then. But because I was so massively into it when it first came out, all of the knowledge is still kind of there, and I have like an appreciation for that world. So I was very intrigued about what this film was going to be like. And basically it involves Justice Smith plays the son of a police detective who was on a case trying to find... I'm trying to remember the specifics of the case. Basically trying to crack a case.
Okay.
This weird like underground government thing that's going on. And his partner was a little Pikachu. And this Pikachu, one day when the dad goes missing and the police department don't know where he's gone, this Pikachu shows up and meets Justice Smith, the son, and they team up. It turns out that miraculously this Pikachu can talk to him, or that they can communicate between each other.
Okay.
Which is normally not a thing because Pokemon, they just say their own name,
Yeah.
usually. So they team up together, and funnily enough, it's the voice of Ryan Reynolds, who knew?
Love it.
Yeah, and they try and crack the case together. And it's... The funny thing was, I think I made a brief comparison in my head before I saw it between this and Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I was like, this seems like it could be...
I
like
can
a
see
Who
that,
Framed
yeah.
Roger- And then when I was watching it, the comparisons became more and more evident. Like, there's so much in this to compare to Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Plot-wise?
Plot-wise, in terms of world building, in terms of how the Pokemon and the cartoons are used, really, yeah, it was just like constantly on my mind. Unfortunately, not particularly favourably.
Okay.
Because it's clear that this film was made on a fairly low budget, comparatively speaking. It's clear that
to like the modern blockbuster.
Yeah. This was clearly like a first attempt where they wanted to test the water before going all in. Whereas Who Framed Roger Rabbit, I think it was the most expensive film ever made when it came out.
Really?
Yeah, I'm
I
pretty
guess
sure
that makes sense,
it held
yeah.
that record. And it's a real mixed bag because on the one hand, the world that they create, which isn't really based upon any one setting in the Pokemon games or animated shows, it's this new city called Rhyme City, which is sort of this towering utopia on one level, but then there's another side to it, this sort of grungy Blade Runner-esque underground when the sun goes down. And it's a world where rather than Pokemon being with trainers, the Pokemon kind of have lives of their own. So you see them like doing jobs and things, and it doesn't really fully flesh that out, but it's an interesting idea.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting to see this. It's a really well realised world.
Well,
And-
like them and humans coexisting.
Yeah. And funnily enough, I told you about this, didn't I? Where I watched the credits and I was like, yeah, the production design's fantastic. Caught the name. I'm trying to remember his name, but I saw the name and thought, I know that guy. And I looked him up, and it was one of the art directors from Batman.
Yes, you
1989.
did tell me that. That must have made you.
Yeah, I was
squeal
really
with
happy
delight.
because it's like he was. He's on the documentaries for Batman, and he's really cool. But it was nice to see like someone who worked on something so big back then still making stuff, and you know, being the head production designer on a film like this. I didn't recognise who wrote the score either, but I really liked the score. But the problem is the story itself is very by the numbers and not particularly engaging as a detective film.
Okay.
I think that it screams of the main problem with this film, which was that it doesn't know quite where to focus its efforts in terms of audience. Because on the one hand, obviously the biggest audience for Pokemon, I would say, is kids. So it kind of has to cater.
That's a gross generalisation.
I think in the modern world, it's not so much. It's not so obvious now. I think there's so much more of a focus on fandom now and nostalgia that it is more difficult. But I would.
Well, yeah, I guess I do a bit of work on Pokemon Go, and the audience for that is incredibly vast.
Predominantly, yeah.
Well, there was a time where it was predominantly women who played it.
Yeah.
It's like it's just incredibly vast.
This is the problem, is that it kind of has to kiddify stuff for kids.
Okay.
But at the same time, the story that they want to tell, that like weird detective thriller starring Ryan Reynolds as Pikachu, is kind of a more mature story.
Feels like it's screaming to be a bit more adult. Yeah.
Yeah. So it hits this weird middle ground where I could feel. Not to mention, like the Pokemon. I almost said the Disney world. The Pokemon world is so.
Everything will be Disney soon.
It will be. It's so steeped in like not lore, but like the way the sort of logic behind the Pokemon world. There's so much of that to get through, and you can feel they're speeding through it, trying to explain it in all the detail they can to adults. And I was sitting in the cinema, I was like, yeah, these guys behind me, they're clearly not getting it. You know, these dads with their kids have no fucking idea what a Pikachu is or what a Pokeball does.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's just so much to pack. It felt very scattershot. It was like...
Okay.
I think the problem is, if they met the good film that they could make out of this would end up being too niche, because you'd just end up catering to big Pokemon fans who are mostly adults, and it like cuts your box office earnings in half.
Yeah.
And so they've tried to broaden the market, and they've ended up making a much, like, they've stretched it all a bit thin. Not to mention the interaction with the Pokemon. This is the other Who Framed Roger Rabbit comparison. Like in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, when you see the like cartoon cameos, they're not just like empty cameos. It's not just like, oh, there's Bugs Bunny. It's kind of every cartoon character is given like a purpose in that world. So like,
yes,
amazing scene at the beginning when Bob Hoskins is walking through the studio lot, and you see all these like classic cartoon characters doing like daily jobs on the lot. So you've got like the brooms from Fantasia like cleaning up, and like a cattle call with all these cows and like bulls turning up for a
great stuff.
Yeah, like everything has a purpose. Whereas in Pokemon, I felt like they were they were too much of a special effect. There would be scenes where you'd have a human there, and then like a Pokemon, and it would occasionally cut to the Pokemon or have the Pokemon do something to remind you that they're there in the scene, but it doesn't really involve them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, disappointing, because I like I say, I do have affection for Pokemon still. I think, well, I mean, the original games are kind of masterpieces, and speaking of the logic, the way they handle the logic and get you into that world so quickly is incredible. Like in terms of how you understand how everything works. But for like a 2 hour long, I don't even know if it was 2 hours long, film that's focusing on such a niche idea, it's just too all over the place. I would definitely recommend anyone who's interested, I would say go see it, because it is kind of interesting to watch and to sort of work out where it goes wrong. But I wouldn't say it's a successful film, unfortunately, which is a shame, because I like I say, I kind of like Pokemon.
Well,
a little 4-year-old inside of me.
I probably won't see it, but
yeah, you were never really fussed about seeing it, were you?
no, I was busy flapping.
Yeah,
making pasta, not making it, eating it.
That was your hobby when you were that young. So, you're going to tell us a bit about Beats?
I'm going to tell you a bit about Beats, directed by Brian Welsh. A little independent film that I went to see of my own volition. So basically, to summarise, it's set in 1994 in a small Scottish town.
Good year.
Great year. Was that the year you were born?
Yeah, and Nemesis.
And two best things in life.
Super Metroid.
Fantastic.
Pulp Fiction. Lion King.
Yeah, good year. Very, very good year.
Beats.
Shawshank.
Shawshank.
Best film ever made.
That's true. That is true.
No, that's very good. Anyway, so it's a small Scottish town, two old friends, one of them from they kind of grow up in a very rough area, one of them from a particularly rough household, one of them is kind of going more in a sort of preppy, perfect family direction, like his mum is marrying a police officer and they're about to leave the neighbourhood and therefore this friendship will probably come to an end. In the background, the Criminal Justice and Public Order Bill has just been passed by Tony Blair and his new Labour government, which is which makes it illegal to have gatherings around music wholly or predominantly characterised by the emission of a succession of repetitive beats. So that basically really puts a strain and starts to kind of destroy rave culture.
Yeah.
In the UK. So it's basically about these two guys who are really, really into their rave music. They call each other and like dance around their bedrooms, like just pumping this loud music.
Yeah.
And then they kind of get to know more a group of people who are similarly into this music, and they're doing this big kind of, I guess, like anarchist movement of like, you know, fuck the law, fuck the police, they can't control us, we're gonna rave and have fun because that's our right. So essentially it puts this very personal story about these two friends and the troubles they're facing and like their families kind of dragging them apart when they kind of want to be together, and puts it against this more social political backdrop. And I thought it worked tremendously well. I thought it was I thought it was really, really good. Like terrific performances. I was really interested because I didn't know anything about this law, which seemed like a bizarre law.
Yeah, I didn't realise. So was it rescinded at some point, or?
I'm not sure if it was. I didn't actually look into that, but it was treated very, very seriously. Like a big thing is like the main point of the film, I won't give too many spoilers, but it's all focuses around this one night in which they go to this huge field. A lot of all the people in this area of Scotland meet up at this field to have like a huge public rave, and it's kind of a big fuck you to the bill. And the point is like all the police officers are coming with like riot shields and stuff to shut it down. It's seen as such an important way of keeping everyone in check. And throughout the film, you get all these TV clippings of Tony Blair speaking on the news saying that, you know, we won't put up with this criminal behaviour, delinquents, all these things, and kind of, I guess, equating crime with these, you know, pretty vibrant, rebellious cultures. And yeah, it's terrifically well. It's all shot in kind of crisp black and white cinematography, and it looks really, really good.
Is it shot on film? Do you know?
I don't know. That's what I'm gonna look up.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It didn't look like you didn't see any film grain.
No. I think I'm pretty sure it's digital in that case.
No, you don't.
I don't know.
You don't look for this sort of thing. That's fine.
I'm sorry. Anyway, but yeah, so it's mainly in black and white, except one sequence where the two guys take hallucinogenics, and basically there's one small sequence in which colour comes in, which is a really, really extraordinary sequence. And like it weirdly reminded me of the bit in 2001 where he goes into, I imagine, like, between time, just like crazy visual explosions.
Did you recognise any of the music in it?
No, I think no. It's not really even though like I'm not interested in that kind of music. I think it was the personal story that interested me, and like the resistance to these law that came from. Are you into that music?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of electronic stuff that I listened to from like the tail end of the 80s and the 90s, and some of it was like, I think they call it like acid house.
Okay.
Like a lot of it was of that time period and kind of involved in that realm of like, you know, sort of self-discovery and, you know, marrying this art with like recreational drugs.
Okay.
So yeah, I'd imagine it's probably relevant to. I'm sure if I looked it up, probably some of the artists
I reckon you'd
were probably
recognise
involved
them in that case. Like,
Yeah.
I think you'd really like it. Actually, it's also
that sounds
like
interesting.
it's a very, very, I think, tonally well done film. Like, it's very, very funny. There are lots of jokes. The main two characters are really, really endearing. But there's also the film is dark and sort of perilous when it needs to be. There's one particularly, this isn't really a spoiler, but there's like an early scene in a kitchen where the one from the more rough household has an encounter with his older brother, and it's properly, you know, properly threatening. You see what's at stake, and you see what could happen if everything goes wrong. And that scene is really, really effective in kind of making you sit up and go, oh shit, these characters really have something to lose, even though, you know, their main motivation is to have a chance at just like having fun and having this incredible night, and experiencing something they love and are passionate about. I think it hits effective beats, I would say, but
that's your one. That's on the poster.
Yeah, put it on the poster.
There you go.
Joe Kelly.
Trim down the whole review.
And I just think, I guess my favourite thing about it was the relationship between the main two guys, and they really established this lovely, it's a platonic relationship between them, and yet they're very, very physically close to each other. And in the rave, they're kind of like kissing each other and holding each other's faces, and it's like it's a type of very kind of positive masculine relationship,
intimate sort of thing.
which is really nice to see, and not really shown that often, I think.
No.
So yeah, I'd really, really recommend it. I think any flaws I have would, in a short review like this, would sound pretty nitpicky, and you'd have to see them. You'd have to see the film, but I'd definitely recommend it. And maybe if you watch it and love it, we can do a deeper dive some other time. But it's very good, and I'd recommend seeing Beats.
Yeah, it kind of passed straight past my radar.
I very much, like, I was at work one day and I had a free evening, and I was looking at the cinema timings. And
was this at Watershed?
Yeah. I just thought had a few good reviews, and I wanted to see something that was a bit more unusual. Yeah, and I'm very glad I did. It was true.
A lot of the time that happens, isn't it?
Yes. So yeah, go see Beats.
Go see Beats. Should I mention my next one?
Yes, go for it.
So my mum was coming over to Bristol probably a few weeks ago, and she said, and she's always super nice about going to the cinema. She's always like, you like going to the cinema, so I'm going to take you.
She's a wonderful woman.
Well, it's very kind of her. But so she said either Red Joan or John Wick 3 is on. Which one do you want to see?
Is Red Joan the one with Judi Dench?
Yeah. Not really my sort of thing. I can't say if it's poor or not. I know it's gotten pretty rubbish reviews, but not really my sort of thing anyway. But I'd only seen the first John Wick, so I very quickly watched the second one on YouTube, legally, by the way. You know, they've got rentals on there.
Very, very well done. Very well done there.
Needed to put that in there. And it was pretty good. I mean, have you seen any of the John Wicks?
I've seen the first one.
Yeah.
I liked it. I really, really loved the way it was shot, and I think the action sequences are really brilliant, and I like that they were mainly done in wide angles, and there was nowhere to hide in terms of the choreography. I thought it was very solid. It didn't really hit me on an emotional level particularly, which is always a problem for me. Yeah, but I thought it was a solid action film.
Yeah. I mean, that entire description pretty much applies to the second one. I watched that and I was like, it was kind of more of the same in the best way possible for the second one. Quite enjoyed it. Was looking forward to the third one. Also, fun fact: so the director Chad Stahelski he's been a stuntman his whole life, and he was Brandon Lee's double in The Crow. When Brandon Lee passed away, he did the body double. which they then married with special effects to fill in the gaps of Brandon Lee's performance. One of my favourite films. I really want to watch that.
I'm responding like that because I think that's such a... I don't know, I feel like that film and that story of Brandon Lee has such a huge legacy.
Oh, God, yeah.
It must be quite an honour to be that guy.
It is, yeah.
Such a tragedy.
But yes, it's him. So he's had a real history of stunt performance, and now he's making these films. So he directed... I believe so the third one is just him, but... He has directed I think the first two with an additional director.
Okay.
So it's like a collaboration. But yeah, enjoyed the second one. Was looking forward to the third one because it looked like it was going to go in more of a sort of slightly spiritual, slightly sort of metaphysical direction. I don't know if you've seen the trailers for it.
No,
it's like
maybe, but I didn't get that sense from it.
So the end of the second film, John Wick has basically been exiled from the order that he was part of, where he could go to the... I'm trying to remember what the hotel is now. I'm blanking.
I know
the Continental.
Yeah.
So he used to stay at the Continental, and he'd get weapons from various people, and he always had this backing, even when the world was against him. Now, absolutely everyone is against him, and he's basically got... I can't remember how long at the beginning of the third one, like half an hour before like every bounty hunter in New York comes after him. It's really, really intensely done. And basically the whole sort of setup is, where is John Wick going? Where does he, now that he's basically been exiled from society, where is he going to go? I think, you know me, I love my drifter heroes. I mean, it felt very like Mad Max-ish, the whole concept of like, where is this guy going? What is his real intention? Is he a hero, or is he just kind of looking out for himself?
Okay.
But unfortunately, the film doesn't really fully live up to that. So it kind of does that for the sort of first half, where you're like, where is he actually going? He ends up going towards the desert, and it's like, he has to walk through walk through the desert. If you want to find this person, and we don't know who this person is, you have to walk through the desert, and when you completely run out of breath, and when you're on the brink of dying, that's when you'll find him. It's like stuff like that, which I love. And then he finds this person, is basically told, you've got to go back to this other place. It just doesn't really feel like it ever goes the full distance with it. It basically goes back to the same old thing after a while. And I think the big problem with it is like what you're saying. These films don't really have like an emotional grounding to them. There's a little bit in there with his wife and his dog who he both lost. But by the third film, I was aware, even though the action scenes are insanely creative. I mean, there's one in an antique store where he's fighting these guys, and they're smashing all these cabinets, getting knives out, throwing knives at each other, hitting each other with knives, and then there's a gun cabinet, and they're getting the guns out, and then he makes like a weird mishmash of a gun out of all these different antique parts so that he can use it. So creative. In terms of choreography.
Those scenes it can't be underestimated how just how well done those things are, because it's like, you could argue that something like that, the construction of a scene like that is similar to the way that you can construct an outstanding scene of dialogue. Do you know what I mean? Like,
it's like ballet, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
They make a very direct comparison to ballet in the third film. But I think the problem is that by the end, I mean, the climax goes on for too long.
Okay.
So even though it's quite an engaging fight, after a while you're kind of like, where is the emotional backing for this? And am I really that engaged to keep up with this fight that's going for like 20 minutes?
Because I believe you can have both.
But that's what I was hoping for. I was hoping that this third one would go in more of like an emotional kind of character-based direction, but it doesn't really. And then they set up a fourth film as well, so it's very, very, very directly leading into a fourth one. And I was just like, I don't really want to see the fourth one. You know, it's kind of, the first one was interesting, a new thing. The second one was great, more of, going for the same stuff again. Third one, it's like the fool me once, shame on you.
Yes, I see.
Twice, shame on me. And then the third time round, it's pretty much the same. And I don't really want to see the fourth one because it's like, is it just going to be more of the same? I think it will. It's like, however skillful of that action is, I don't believe it's quite justified by the emotional or the level or the story.
Are you a Keanu Reeves fan?
Kind of. I quite like him. I think he's really good in this role. Like, to sort of compare, I do think he's got that same quality as Mel Gibson had as Mad Max, where, like, very understated, and he says a lot about himself just with his presence and the way he moves and the way he sort of...
I liked him a lot in the first one.
Yeah. He's got that quality to him. I think he's almost got like a weird melancholic quality to him that lends itself to this role.
I think there's a sadness and an emptiness to him that I think is mocked a lot, including by me. But in certain roles, it works terrifically.
Yeah.
And I think this is one of them.
Yeah, but it's just a shame that more isn't done with it. And it's a weird film when it comes to suggesting it. It's like, well, I would suggest it on the basis of the action because a lot of it's very thrilling. But if you're expecting anything deeper, I don't know that I would. I mean, the audience, I saw it in a packed cinema, and the audience was so reactive to it. Like, all of the violence was getting, oh. And it was really funny at one point. There was this guy sat next to me who was loving it. And there's a bit where John Wick gets handed a gun, like this massive machine gun, and this guy next to me goes, "That is a beautiful gun." I was like, I don't know whether to take that on face value or not, but it's very funny to hear. But yeah, it was good fun seeing it. But
an NRA spokesperson.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I look to my right, and Charlton Heston's
you can
sitting
think
there
that.
in the flesh.
Guns in movies can be cool.
Yeah, they can be. Like I say, when he builds one out of weird antique parts, it's really fun.
Have you seen that bit in one of the Naked Gun films where, oh crikey, O.J. Simpson? There's an action sequence in which he's like, have you seen it?
No, I don't.
There's a really funny action sequence where there's a shootout and it keeps cutting to O.J. Simpson and he's like assembling a gun, and then every time it cuts back to him, he's assembling more parts of a gun. It starts as like a pistol, and then it becomes like longer and bigger, and then it's just like you see him like just keep adding things to it during the shooting sequence, and then just when it's about to end, suddenly like a huge like wall blows apart, and then it just cuts to O.J. Simpson behind like a massive cannon.
But yeah, I would say
I don't endorse O.J. Simpson
or gun violence. Yeah, I don't know that I recommend it, and to be honest, I'm not looking forward to a fourth film because it seems like it would be more of the same.
Okay.
And as skillful as the action is, there's not enough keeping me invested to keep up with it. I was actually quite tired by the end of the third one because, like I say, the climax went on too long.
That's a shame.
And I was disappointed by the lack of a sort of character arc in there. Sorry, Keanu.
Oh.
Sorry, Chad.
Boy.